This program, as most of you know, explores the spiritual side of life. We're trying to present inspiring and thought-provoking speakers who challenge us to take our relationship with God seriously. In order to do this, we rely on your support, which has been so generous. Thank you, keep writing, and bless you all. Now let's talk with Harold Kushner. This thing about the afterlife, which, as you say, is rather a vague thing, don't you think? No, but God deliberately has not made it clear, and He suggested various versions of it in various faiths.
David, it's not just He hasn't made it clear. It's that even if somebody could tell me what it was like, there's no way I could understand what it means to exist in terms other than physical. It would be like trying to explain to a fetus what it's like to walk around, breathe air, make your own decisions. It's a whole different realm of existence. We speculate about it, and we always end up thinking of heaven very much like some kind of tropical vacation spot, Club Med or something in this world. We can't get it through our heads. It's a totally different kind of existence.
There's lots of stuff being written about after-death experiences or near-death experiences. How do you, where's your assessment of all that?
10 years ago, I would have been very skeptical. As I get older, I become much less skeptical and much more open-minded. What strikes me, David, is that these near-death experiences are all so similar, I'm prepared to posit there may be something to them. The idea of going through a tunnel-like experience, seeing a light at the end, being welcomed by someone you had known and loved on earth. I can't imagine it happens exactly like that, but I can believe there is something to that. The message I get from it is not that this is what it feels like to die, but that death need not be frightening. This is the most important message that these experiences bring to me. We don't want to die. We don't want to cause grief to the people around us. We'd like to be around long enough for the next wedding, the next graduation, the next grandchild. But you don't have to be afraid of death. It's not going to hurt. It's not fearful. It's not like all those medieval paintings of the Last Judgment. There is something very calm and welcoming about this moving on to the next step.
And we're in good hands.
I think that's really the message.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting you talked about, is the universe friendly? And that's such a separator of people. Wasn't that the question that Albert Einstein asked, or somebody?
Yeah. There's an old rabbinic saying that I think is so wise. It says, God is like a mirror. The mirror never changes, but everybody who looks at it sees a different face.
Right.
Some people will look at the world and see a friendly place, and some will see a hostile place. It's the same world. One person will walk into a hospital and see a story of pain and outrage and the unfairness and the arbitrariness of life. And somebody else will go into that same hospital, walk down that same corridor, and the message that person will get is that the hospital is a place where courage and love and healing happens. Same facts, different interpretations.
Well, and maybe different the same person, different times.
Absolutely.
I know that there are times when I really am there to take it in as a fascinating place, an interesting experience full of remarkably gifted people. And there's times when I'm in a hurry and I wish I wasn't waiting, and it's my own inner impatience that so often does in maybe the more positive things that I can really experience.
Yeah, but it's the same world, and you make a very important point, that what we bring to it is going to color the way we see the world, and we're not the same person every single time, and we can't expect ourselves to be.
I wanted to ask you about because the title fascinates me, and I have not read this one of yours, When All You've Wanted Isn't Enough. What do you say in that? I mean, what are you saying?
It's an extended commentary on the strangest biblical book I've ever studied, the book of Ecclesiastes. It's all the way tucked at the end of the Hebrew Bible. Most people never get to it, and if they get to it, they can't figure it out. I don't know how the book got there. Had I been on the committee, I would have voted against it. This is dangerous stuff. Ecclesiastes is a book written by a middle-aged man contemplating his death, terribly frightened that even though he's been so successful, made so much money, done so much with his life, he'll die and it'll all disappear. And he says, what's the point of knocking yourself out if you can't take it with you, if it's all going to disappear when you die? The fame, the learning, the wealth, the reputation, the pleasure, if it won't survive you. And he goes on for several chapters wondering what's the point of life, with this almost sense of despair, very, very unbiblical. There's nothing like it in all of Scripture. And at the end, the conclusion he comes to is that because life is short, that's what makes it precious. if we were going to live forever, we wouldn't have to clutch onto life the way we do. We wouldn't have to make so much of every
We
day.
wouldn't have to relish each day.
That's right. So he has this magnificent passage, which for me is the conclusion of the book, though it doesn't come to the end. You know, scriptural authors have this funny habit of reaching the climax of their book about 2/3 of the way through, and if they have more space on the scroll, tossing in a lot of stuff at the end that they just took out of their drawers. The climax comes in chapter 9 of the book of Ecclesiastes. Therefore go eat your bread in gladness and drink your wine in joy. Let your clothes always be fresh and your head never lack for oil. Enjoy life with the person you love, because that's all there is to life. Because life is precarious, because I think, for example, of autumn in New England where I live, where the trees explode in this foliage of bright yellows and reds, and you know that they're so beautiful because they're dying. This is the way trees die. And you know that if you're busy at the office and you don't get out to see them this week, it's going to rain on Sunday, and when you go out next week, they'll all be gone. You have to go out and cherish that moment. Friendships are precious because life is so vulnerable. Beauty is special because it doesn't last.
Well, in Ecclesiastes, you say this fellow realizes that it's short and he's got to enjoy it. I think, and a lot of people, as you say, can't take it in now because they're so worried about the future. And one of the things I think that I've seen is that, as he points out, you can't take it with you, but you can leave it to your children. And I think my experience has been that that isn't a very healthy idea a lot of the time, that we're afraid to trust them to the world, that we can't protect them. In fact, there's so many of the wealthy children that I happen to run across in my life were made terribly unhappy by their inheritance.
Well, I think we all know examples like that. You have, for example, this very common tendency in American life. Children from very wealthy families either go into public service, the Rockefellers, the Harrimans, the Bushes, the Kennedys, or else become playboys and wastrels and end up either on the society pages or on the police blotter. I gave a sermon once on King David's last testament to his son Solomon as he's dying, that the most precious thing he left Solomon was not an empire and not a throne and not a fortune. The most precious thing he left him was an unfinished agenda. That we have to give our kids things to do, things we would have wanted to do and never got around to and couldn't, so that they can feel they are achieving something on their own.
I think that is, magnificent, and I think we need to take that in. I would gather, we've talked, you're a type A.
Very much so. The secret of my success.
And right, you got a lot done. Now, the shadow side of being a type A, and I'm one too, is what? What's the problem with being a type A?
That you're always leaving people behind, that you can never stop to savor what you're doing because you're trying to see what's next on your check-off list. I've learned, when I reach a certain point in life, you remember that wonderful passage in Jung, that Act 1 of a man's life is going out to conquer the world. And Act 2 of that same man's life is realizing the world isn't going to be conquered by the likes of you. So slow down, go back and fill in all the spaces you left blank when you were in a hurry to get someplace. Wow. I've tried to do that as I matured into my 50s. Less of a striver and more of a mentor.
Yeah. Speaking of mentors, we've just got about half a minute left. Who are some of the mentors in your life or people that you've modeled after? Are there some?
The most influential ones probably your viewers have never heard of. The rabbi of my boyhood in Brooklyn, Israel Leventhal, my teacher at seminary, Mordecai Kaplan, and I guess the figure of Sigmund Freud over them all and his struggle to understand what makes a human soul tick and do something helpful about it.
Are there some current writers that you enjoy?
Oh, I pick up all sorts of stray books. I don't read a whole lot of fiction. I'll read sociology and psychology. Anything that Eric Erickson writes, I will rush out to buy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's a wonderful man. Thank you very much, Harold, for being here. It's been a great program.
David, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.